Okay, people, back again for another session of Inside Blockchain. And today we have none other than Stephen Stonberg of Bittrex. So I think this is going to be an exciting one, guys. Everybody wants to ask what's going on with the exchanges. And just to put a final point on it, we are recording this on the 20th of May. So if you know what happened in the last, let's say, 48 hours, then you know what we're getting at there. So, Stephen, how are you doing this afternoon, this day, this evening?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here. And just to clarify, I'm with the part of Bittrex, it's called Bittrex Global, which is the bit outside of the US. So we deal with all of the non-US clients.
Okay, so US customers, if you're watching this right about now, some of it might not apply to you, or I would say probably doesn't, but obviously it's still good insight into what this business is doing internationally, and seeing kind of some of the underbelly, maybe learning a bit about how the exchange is working and what's been going on. So, Stephen, first of all, we always like to ask this question to everybody when they come on Inside Blockchain, and it is, why do you do what you do?
Well, I asked this question too of people, sort of, how did you get into crypto and when did you buy your first Bitcoin? So I'm assuming that's what you want to know. And so for me, I've always been, even my finance career, I was always attracted to growth areas, and I would always run to the kind of scary new things. So I did credit derivatives when that was new, and I moved into hedge funds when that was still pretty new. I'm old, so I've done a lot of new. This is like my third or fourth new thing, but in terms of crypto, I think, the first bull market back in 2017, it was hard not to notice that. And, once I sort of started doing research into it, digging beyond just what, the Bitcoin bubble and the ETH bubble back then, and you really understand blockchain, because I think that's what this is. It's all about blockchain. Cryptocurrencies are the current use case getting all of the airtime, but really the whole thing is blockchain. And what is blockchain? It's this amazing settlement system that operates 24/7, and banks and all sorts of financial services companies use really, really old settlement systems. So, they haven't really been updated since after World War II. And I thought this was going to be like what I like to say, the Amazon moment for retail, for financial services, driven by the blockchain. So I thought, how can you not be involved in this? And it's so early days. And why wouldn't you attach yourself to like some new growth industry? And I decided, I joke, poacher turned gamekeeper. I'd rather leave the traditional financial services, switch sides to crypto, and help undermine the old places, which are going to get disintermediated anyway. So that's kind of was my approach. I dove right in, 3 years ago, and most of it, I would say 95% of it, I've been working for Bittrex and Bittrex Global.
Okay. So, and that brings me to another question that I did have as well, which was that you have, worked for some of the big boys out here in the fight, the hated big boys as well. I would say.
Yeah. Now that I'm on this side, the awful banks, we hate them.
Yeah, right. So I was gonna say, how does it feel? Does it feel like you've just gone on this adrenaline rush kind of flip side, and it's like, wow, now I'm living, stick it to the boss kind of.
I think, well, of course, but who doesn't like a bit of Schadenfreude? It's fun. One admits it, but I think at the end of the day, we still need banks, and I think the two industry, as I always tell people, in like blockchain, or if you're in crypto, if you're in financial services, it's still regulated just because it's settled on a blockchain. If that's considered a security, don't think, and I think that's an interesting thing in this industry. I'd say half of the exchanges behave that way, and it's a new space, so it's complicated, but you figure it out with the regulators. The other half think it's a new technology, it's not finance, these rules don't apply. Well, I think you'll find the regulators think differently. And I think BitMEX has found that out. Binance has the DOJ, the IRS, and the CFTC. I think we'll see how this plays out. I don't have any insights, but I'm definitely in your regulated camp. But I think I'd rather disintermediate the banks from this side and see what happens than sit and wait. And it's sort of like, again, if you're a retailer selling books in the 90s, would you rather work for Amazon or stay at Barnes & Noble? I think, you might have thought Barnes & Noble was a better place in 90. You probably don't even know what that is. It used to be a big chain of bookstores.
Yeah.
But Amazon is clearly the place you want to be, right? So I think it's that kind of we're sort of like 1994 in the development of the internet. It just launched.
100%. So how did you in fact land the job at Bittrex then in the end? Was it just a decision that you saw a job advert and you were like, I'm really jumping
No,
into this
that's
crypto, or somebody?
crypto. Essentially, this is back in like 2017. It's a very small space still, so I don't think it's that massive. I think the big players all know each other. It's still very clubby. And, hedge funds was similar. When you leave the banks and you go, I used to be in the hedge fund world. That's pretty small too, and it still is. So they all sort of know each other. So I'd say there's a lot of similarities actually. I think between sort of the crypto exchanges and the hedge funds. A lot of the hedge funds now are actually getting very involved in crypto, so that's not surprising. But I think for me, I was very lucky I was very interested, so I reached out to a lot of the crypto players, in a new market to try to get to know them. And you could back then, it was easier. Like there weren't a lot of real world financial people interested in it. You were considered, it was like the marijuana industry. Like, why would you want to do that? Which now it's legal and it's very profitable. So I think, hindsight's 2020. I got very lucky, and I met, while I was still working in a bank, I met Bill Shahara, who's one of the founders of Bittrex, and is still, Bittrex is still 100% owned by the three founders. So we don't have outside money, and they're real crypto OGs and extremely pro blockchain and love the space. It's not venture capital money or just investors. So I met him, and got to know him actually through the bank, and then it just evolved. I thought it would be much more interesting to work for him and be in crypto than to stay in the bank, and that's sort of how. But it didn't happen overnight, and it took a long time, and it's relationship building. But that whole time I was really just spending time learning about blockchain, just sucking up. It's like drinking from a fire hose, drinking as much information as you can. And you never stop learning in this space. But that's kind of how I got into it.
Okay. And for those who don't know, what is your current like day-to-day, let's say, role within Bittrex? What are you responsible for?
So, So within Bittrex Global, which is the non-US part of the exchange, remember there's Bittrex US exchange, and then Bittrex has a technology company which supports both of the exchanges. So all the wallets and the engineers, and that's all in the US, in Seattle, where the company was founded. And all the founders came out of Microsoft and Amazon, so they were doing security for both. So that's sort of very much the ethos and the background of this company. So my day-to-day, and it's interesting when you leave a bank and go to a hedge fund. A bank has like 100,000 employees, and there's all these people and departments that do everything for you. When I went to work for a hedge fund, and I went to work for a pretty big one, max, when it was at peak assets, it was only 400 employees. So so I liken the hedge fund world and sort of the crypto world. These are massive companies, but they're running with very small numbers of people. So it's, a leverage model. And I think there's a lot of similarities between that part of the financial services space, and they're very quick moving, big money's involved. And that's very similar to the crypto exchanges. So I think that sort of made it very easy for me to transition, because I'd already been in like a smaller, more nimble environment, not just a big bank. I went back to a big bank, but that's not, once you know how to operate in that kind of more entrepreneurial environment. So a long-winded answer, I would say the hedge fund, I was chief cook and bottle washer. You sort of do everything. I mean, you don't have a choice. There's no one else to do it but you. So you're doing everything from conference calls with regulators. You're meeting, sometimes, more fun days, meeting like government heads of state or heads of a regulator. But some days you're just unpacking boxes and setting up computers. You do it all. I mean, it's fun. I like that. And as we grow, you do less of the sort of startup-y things. But I think that's pretty typical in all of these companies. I think and most of the guys running these big exchanges or owning them, they're pretty humble, down to earth. I mean, they might be on paper have, inflated net worth because of the run up of all the coins. But I'd say versus like a bank CEO, they're much more kind of down to earth, and they're much more doing it for the tech and their belief in blockchain than just kind of for their bank account. I mean, don't get me wrong, they have those too, but that's not the motivator, and no one judges people, I think.
I think that's what everyone tends to find after you spend a little time around the industry, other than just being, let's say, an investor or a collector of cryptocurrencies. Once you spend a bit of time professionally in the industry, then you start to realize everything is not like, the traditional run-of-the-mill industries where everybody's like, you know, like kind of running this hamster wheel, and we've got to get somewhere, but where are we going? And you know, in crypto, it's kind of like everybody's like, yeah, we'll get there soon. It's cool. Let's just, you know, let's
have fun while we're doing it, and like we don't have to be like stuffed shirts. Like we don't want to be in the bank. You know, I'm sure it's like the internet 90. You know, people were so happy to go work in startups, and I think so. It has that kind of tech feeling, but you know, I think what's interesting is you are operating in, you know, these are massive financial services companies. If you really think about it, they just appeared overnight. We've never seen that before. And I think, you know, the internet alone couldn't enable that. You needed blockchain. So you have a global digital settlement system combined with the internet, then you can create global financial services companies overnight. I mean, look at Coinbase. You know, at obviously the prices come down a bit. When they IPO'd, the market value of Coinbase was more than Goldman Sachs. And Coinbase was like a 5-year-old company. Like, that's crazy. I mean, it took like 120 years or 30 years to build Goldman, and that's just in 5 years. So imagine if they keep at that rate, like they'll leave them in the dust, which goes back to why I left. Like, why would you want to stay at the company that's, you know, where do you think the stock price appreciation is going to be? Goldman or Coinbase? I'd put my money on Coinbase. Or, you know, Bittrex isn't public.
And they were talking about this year as well, wasn't it? Over the last year, about Binance volume being more than the whole entire NASDAQ volume. Like, and it was just like, yo.
I take those numbers with a grain of salt too, because they own the company that does, you know, that's interesting. In this industry, things that wouldn't be allowed, you know, wouldn't be accepted in like the company that does the league tables wouldn't be owned by one of the people on the league table. In this industry, we sort of accept it, but that, you know, I take that data with a bit of a grain of salt, actually. But yes, I mean, still, there's probably a lot of truth to it. They have massive volumes on Binance, and that's pretty incredible. Like, you're right. These companies that just didn't exist 3 or 4 years ago, in like, and you know, FTX has massive volumes like these, you know, overnight, like, or in 3 years. It's just, I think the banks are beginning, which is why after the last crash, oh, you know, we love crypto, we hate crypto. And now, you know, Goldman set up a crypto desk, they shut the crypto desk. This time around, they're setting them up again because they have no choice. Their clients are demanding to have this in their accounts. So they're doing it not because they want to, but they have no choice.
Yeah, of course. And with Bittrex being one of the oldest and kind of most known exchanges out here, are there any real big plans? Because I've noticed one thing that I've noticed personally, and maybe because I'm a Bittrex customer as well. So I've noticed that you guys have been extra quiet, like over this period when everybody else is, all the other exchanges. Again, it's not to say that you guys haven't been promoting, but all the other exchanges have been like yield farming, loaning, you know, whatever. And Bittrex have kind of said, we're still here, we still work. Remember this, yeah, right? And that's kind of like what's
okay. Let me give you, first of all, I'd say that's a bit, you know, I'd say that first of all, look, as we talked about in the beginning of this, a lot of exchanges just don't follow regulations. So let's say that, I'll give you an example. If I'm a bank, I'm Goldman Sachs, and then there's another bank that sets up that doesn't do any regulations. Well, they'll have an unfair competitive advantage and they can grow a lot faster than you. And they're not spending any money on compliance or regulation. They can spend it all on marketing and do whatever they want, go 1,000,000 miles an hour. Guess what? As we saw in the case of BitMEX, and I think there'll be more of those, that works while it works. And so I think, you know, first of all, you know, we wish all of our competitors in the industry well, but I just don't know, you know, I think there'll be more of those BitMEX type situations where, you know, there'll be enforcement actions, because you can't, if you cut corners, then eventually you can grow really fast. But unfortunately, the regulator doesn't, you know, they'll say you were operating in financial services. Here are the rules. We don't care if you didn't understand them. Like, you're whatever, guilty as charged, and then they'll freeze your website, seize the assets, the customers lose faith, and then even if they don't shut the company, it'll be a shell of itself. So I think that's kind of a generic statement. So what are we doing? We're totally focused on regulation because we're in it for the long game. I sleep well at night, so I don't worry about that. And we want to be around in the long term. So I think we're in the camp, we fully believe in regulation. So our US exchange, fully regulated, money service licenses in all the states, etc. Why did we move part of the business offshore? Well, so for our non-US clients, the US rules aren't that clear and they're pretty restrictive because of that lack of clarity. So for our non-US clients and our non-US projects, we didn't want to subject them to that. So instead of running a global business out of the US, we have a US business out of the US and a global business that's not domiciled in the US. But where do you put that? So we looked around at a bunch of different jurisdictions and we ended up, for our utility token exchange, is in Liechtenstein. So, which do you know where that is? A lot of people haven't heard of it. So it's a
Yeah,
little
I've never
principality.
been there. I know where it is, but I've never
Yeah, it's
been
between
there.
Switzerland and Austria. It's the highest GDP per capita on planet Earth. It's, you know, it's a tiny country. It's like 40,000 people. And it's an EEA member state. So they have Swiss franc as the currency, but then unlike Switzerland, they join the EEA. So that means for financial services, they have full EU passporting. If you have a bank, it's just like a German bank. They have but then the EEA thing means they don't have to, you can't move there. So they control their border. So it's kind of like they have what the UK could never get. They were too big. They still be in the active market and control your borders. So that's why we chose to be there. And they passed a blockchain act. So you have 1000% legal clarity on what we're doing there, and we can still market. So that we wanted a clean jurisdiction. It took us a year. You know, we set up the office there. We have staff there. We have a license, and we're under the supervision of a European bank regulator. So not a lot of exchanges can say that. And, you know, we have to do full KYC and AML on anybody that wants to onboard globally. So you can be a mainland Chinese person, we will accept you, but you still have to pass Liechtenstein standard KYC and AML, which is up to, that's EU. So, you know, we can't take everybody. That's some of the other exchanges that you mentioned. If you just have an email address, there's no KYC, great. But unfortunately, that's called money laundering. So we don't want to do that. We wish the others well, but of course they can grow their businesses much more quickly if they don't have the same high standards. So our business model is much more sustainable. So we, under that supervision, we have almost 400 tokens. So not every exchange, you know, Coinbase doesn't do that type of offering. So I like to think of the regulated exchanges, we're actually kind of very cutting edge still. And Bittrex is always known for being more kind of cutting edge, having lots of altcoins. And that's why we chose Liechtenstein, because we know that we can offer those products with complete certainty. Our clients and investors are very safe. The token teams are safe. It's all under supervision. So we also launched security tokens, but we could do it in Liechtenstein, too complicated. We set up a second exchange in Bermuda. We got a license in Bermuda. We are fully regulated in Bermuda by the Bermuda Monetary Authority. We are already offering security tokens or tokens. So you can buy tokenized Tesla, tokenized Google, tokenized Amazon right now. And there's only a handful of exchanges doing that. So it may not be this massive volume product. Maybe we need to spend more on PR so people know we're doing it, but we're there and we're doing it the right way because we're doing it in a regulated way. Some of our competitors are not doing it that way. So I'd say we're doing a lot of cool stuff, and we're looking at bringing even more products. Like we're focusing on very regulated things like insurance and where you need licenses, because we know that our friends that don't follow the rules won't be able to get those regulatory licenses. I don't want to play their game. I can't win, and nor will they. But until the regulators crack down, they'll always be bigger. I'd rather focus my energies on things they can't do. And last thing, sorry, I'm like giving you lecture, go. As the banks start to want to trade and do crypto, do you think they can trade with an unlicensed exchange, or do you think they can only trade with somebody who's regulated by a bank regulator? So as I'll start to gather all that new business. So again, we're in it for the long game. We're not here to be the biggest at this moment in time in an unstable sort of, you know, regulatorily questionable behavior. That's what we're doing.
And I was going to say that with tokenized stocks, a lot of people didn't know this, but you guys were actually the first exchange to launch tokenized stocks, weren't you?
Yep. Actually, we did it right after FTX. So they launched it first. We launched it right after them, and we actually launched. It's their token, so they're the issuer. You can trade them on their exchange, but you know, our clients obviously who want to stay with Bittrex can do it with us, and you know, we have regulatory clarity for them, which was hard to get.
Okay, and that actually reminds me. So FTX isn't available on Bittrex, though, is it? That was one thing that I thought was quite strange.
Yeah, it's not listed. We're working on that.
Okay. Right. So that's for the FTX token fans out there, because I know quite a few people.
We're big fans of FTX. We like them a lot. We know them extremely well. So that's another great exchange. I mean, you know, they have, again, they do tons in derivatives, which we're not doing. That's, you know, we have some tokenized derivatives, but we're not doing outright derivatives and options and futures. And, you know, that's a great exchange for people who want to do products like that we just don't offer. So I'd say, you know, they're very complementary companies. We do a lot with them.
And that actually bring me to my next question, which is: are there any plans for Bittrex at all? Any considerations for creating like a BSC style ecosystem for Bittrex? Is that
I think we're
anywhere in the
considering
plans?
lots of new products, but that's probably not one of the closest things on the roadmap. I'd say we have, you were mentioning some, I think some more basic things we're working on, like adding some new banking relationships and kind of building out the current offering would probably come sooner, and really optimizing ourselves. And I agree, we are, unlike some of our regulated competitors who took VC money, who have like thousands of employees, we don't. So, again, that's fine. We wish them the best. We're growing at our pace. We're sticking to our business plan. We're not trying to be the biggest. We're not trying to be everything to everybody, but we do have some catch up in terms of fiat on ramps. We have some, but we'd like to have more. So I think those types of things will take priority, and then you will see bigger things from us, but it may not be me too things that competitors are doing. We might go in another direction in regulatory types of path where we can go.
So, I mean, as I said, Bittrex, as you said, you're saying here, like, I mean, for me anyway, as I said, as a customer, Bittrex has always been along that route. And if anyone's been paying attention, has been using Bittrex for a number of years. I remember in 2017, actually, I mean, just before we started, we were talking about, over the past couple of days and exchanges going down, exchanges crashes and stuff like that. I remember during 2017, when all this was going on as well, I think Bittrex had it was something like a 2-hour blip or something like that. And people went crazy. They were just like, Bittrex is down. They were like, it's over. BTC is dead. The moment people saw Bittrex was down for like even 10 minutes, it was just like, it was crazy, because Bittrex at the time was considered as like, if Bittrex went down, that was it. We thought everything was, obliterated, like, because that's how trusted I'm saying that it was. As
I think it still is, and it was also, it wasn't just the trusted, which it still is, but it was also the biggest. And then you had all these other, some of these other big players that have come along. I think the difference was, after that first, it was really after the first bull run, and the difference was, there were two paths, and the regulation started coming down because they noticed crypto. And Bittrex decided to go down the heavily regulated path, and by definition, you'll see that none of the, Coinbase is big, but that's, VC, they've IPO. They don't really do much. They just do it with a lot of clients, right? There's like 10 or 20 tokens. It's a great company, small offering. It's more about just like your first Bitcoin and its ease of use. And they've gone for like scale. Whereas I'd say, Kraken's another competitor, regulated, but they also have VC money. But none of these are the biggest companies. I mean, the biggest ones are all the really unregulated ones by definition, because they don't have to worry about that. So I think, we are still very trusted, and we haven't been hacked and all of that stuff. And so even if in the short run other players may come and go, we know that we're going to be around in the long term. So we'd rather, slow and steady wins the race, the tortoise, not the hare.
That's it. And with let's say like development teams that are working on projects at the moment, what can you guide us through? Kind of like the typical, again, I know this is long, so let's not. Well, I don't want to drag it out, because I know the processes myself. So, could you just talk us through the typical process that a team would need to go through if, let's say, they wanted to get their token listed or their project?
Token listings, very straightforward. So we're doing two types. So most of all of our token listings to date have been utility tokens. We've listed security tokens that are referencing other existing securities. We have a pipeline of teams that want to issue security tokens, and there's very few places you can do that. Like, we're one of the only ones. So we have a listings team, and you can email listings at bittrex.li for Liechtenstein, and you can contact the team directly. So for token teams, also we have all the instructions. If you go to the Bittrex Global website, it tells you who to contact if you want to list your token. So step one, you make contact with the team. Step two, there's a huge questionnaire, and we'll take a ton of information from the team. We'll vet to make sure, even if you can pay, there are listing fees, and the team will tell you, and that depends on what type of listing you want to do, what type of project. And then, we highly recommend that token teams, they have to have a market maker. We'll make introductions. Those fees go directly to the market maker, but you have to support the trading, or the token's not going to be a success. We also, and again, unlike these unregulated competitors, every token that's listed on our exchange has to get a Liechtenstein legal opinion. So there's an actual legal opinion, like you would do for a real security in the real world. And the Liechtenstein law is EU law. So you have an EU legal opinion saying it's a utility token, it's not e-money, it's not a security. So you have legal clarity. And if they can't pass that test, you can't get on the exchange. So there's a bunch of steps that you may not have on other exchanges, plus working with the token team. That's if you have an ERC20. Obviously, if it's a mainnet, then there's a whole integration process that would have to be added on and work with our tech team to integrate the token. But I mean, it's pretty, we do such a high volume of listings, I think, compared to other exchanges, and we do it in a clean regulatory fashion. So step one is to make contact. If you think you have a great project, we'd love to hear from you. We don't have US investors. There's no US residents, regardless of passport, no US passports, regardless of residence. So even like an American living in London can't access the exchange. So we have, if you want to, but if your audience for your token is the rest of the world, and that's where most of the people live, and that's where most of blockchain's happening outside of the US, we think that's a great thing. And because we're not in the US, you don't have to worry about it being considered, the SEC has no say, right? So again, we're not escaping regulation. We just don't want US regulation on non-US projects, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, 100%. 100%. So, all right. So what would you say is an integral part to a good and innovative blockchain project or product?
Well, I think, look, not every project, just like every company that lists in the New York Stock Exchange may not succeed. The stock exchange is making no opinion, but, obviously there's no fraud. Like these are real companies, like we will vet that. And there are a lot of, not everyone, like again, in crypto, just like in I say real world, the old world, I should say, like you have people that companies that issue stock and it's like fraudulent and they take the money. And so I think you have to be aware of all these things. We try to vet very carefully just to avoid that type of stuff. So clearly we want real projects and where there's a real use case, not just, again, even if there's no fraud, not everyone's going to. So I think we try to, use our best judgment, not that we're not making an investment advice or we're not saying this is a great project. We're saying this project, here's a white paper, there is a legal opinion, just like if you buy a stock on the exchange, you as the investor have to review it and make sure you're happy and you think it's great. We've done some initial vetting for you, just so it's not, at least it's not fraud or a Ponzi scheme or anything else. I think that, and remember, because we're under the way we do listings, we're under the supervision of a regulator, which not every exchange is. So you get some comfort there. And I think that's what we try to look for. So we're in a great seat. We get to meet so many teams, and we have to turn away half the projects because there's just not that much. Even though we do list a lot, we only have so many listing spots. So I'd say if you have a great project, we'd love to hear from you. Don't hesitate to reach out. And if you're a primary or a secondary listing, and even if you're on one of these bigger exchanges with all the volume, I like to tell people it's good to have maybe listed on another exchange that has a regulatory license, just in case something happens with the other one. You want to make sure you're trading somewhere. So it's a good hedge, I think,
100.
at the very least.
100%. And so what do you feel is, sorry, what do you feel is the biggest challenge for most of the blockchain projects that are around today?
I think, it's becoming a crowded space. So getting your voice heard now, and it's just like the last time we had a bubble. It was easier. Well, there was less liquidity in the last 2 or 3 years, but probably you could get more attention because you weren't competing. So obviously you need to make sure people hear you and they can hear why your project is different. Is it a Me Too project? Are you doing something that no one else is doing? So I think all of these things are, again, this is stuff you would, if you were doing any sort of company, blockchain or not, like you would have these same types of issues in a crowded space. I think the other problem too, everyone faces, the tech resourcing it's so competitive to get talent to, the product implementation of a lot of these projects. I mean, that's where I'd say for us, even, and most exchanges I think have this as well, just getting enough tech talent to keep up with the growth. So, and I would say that's probably the same for the project teams as well.
Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, developers and shortage of developers is obviously just a massive issue on its own. So I think, that is
you have a global chip shortage as well, so the equipment is not even available. So I think exacerbated by COVID.
That's a whole new interview.
That's a whole new interview. It's interesting, the COVID and some of the political dislocations and economic stuff is actually, I think, been very good for crypto, and it's accelerated our growth rate, or the adoption of blockchain has probably been just like remote working and Zoom, all of this stuff, I'd say blockchain has greatly benefited from, again, a very unfortunate thing, but that's just the silver lining. It's been very good for our industry. And because we already all worked from home with Zoom anyway, it wasn't actually very disruptive.
That was actually going to be one of my later questions about the coronavirus. And it seems to be that everybody that I've interviewed so far has the same opinion. You know, okay, yeah, we know it's a bad event. We know it's a downturn for all kind of industries, but in the blockchain industry, in crypto, everything's kind of just been improving, because I think people started to realize at one point, I mean, back in February of 2020, I remember saying to people, like, this is the event that I've been talking about for the past 4 years. This is what's going to now drive everybody to saying we have to. And I said to my missus, like, you know, what's going to happen after that? The first thing they're going to do after this social distancing is they're going to tell people to start using cashless systems, because they're going to come with the same talk that they did about cocaine on dollar. Yeah, they're going to say, okay, so, you know, cocaine on $1, so the coronavirus on $1. Like, and I just literally just saw the whole thing happen in front of me. And I said to her, look, in the next 2 weeks, you're going to see them talking about this. So by the time we got to like end of February, beginning of March, you know, we're going to the local shops and everybody's got these screens up. Yeah, and it starts saying cashless. So she's going to me and I'm going to her, yeah. You know, look, it's happening. She's going, yeah, you know, I can see, I know, you know, but then eventually now you get to this point where, you know, you got Boris Johnson saying nobody should be spending, we should be trying to spend cashless if possible. And I said, you know what's going to happen in the next couple of months for crypto?
Fintech banking, and you should be doing digital sterling or digital dollars. I think what they didn't realize is that at the same time, oh, there's this whole new system called blockchain. And what's really fascinating about crypto. So if you have cash in your bank account, you know, you can buy things with it, but you don't buy things with your Apple stock in your portfolio. Like you would have to sell it, get sterling or dollars and go to the shop with sterling or dollars. Who cares if it's digital? It's on your credit card. Like but you're spending cash in some form or another. But with a Bitcoin, so that's interesting. It's very volatile. It's same with all these other, you know, ETH, whatever you have. It's not considered a stock, but it behaves more like a stock in terms of, you know, your dollars don't go from being worth $1 to worth $60,000. They fluctuate a bit. You know, they don't really move that much. That's the whole point of it. But so you have this interesting investment asset class, but you can spend it. So it's like you could take a piece of your Apple stock and go buy like a coffee with it. So you have this new cashless thing that's actually an investment portfolio, which the central banks have no control over. So it's actually, and it's happened so fast, they don't even realize what's happened. So you be careful what you wish for, and it may not happen in the way you predict or you think you can control. And I think Pandora's box has been opened, and it's not going to be, they can't close it. Yeah, you know, all these countries that want to ban crypto, good luck. It's like, we're going to ban the internet. Like that, you can't, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
well, we heard that in the 90s. We're going to ban the internet. Like, it's awful. Like, okay, good luck enforcing that. That's not going to work.
And that being said, what do you feel are going to be, just in your own opinion, what do you feel are like your top kind of disrupted industries by this within the next 10 years? Let's say, like, what would you feel will be most disrupted? And
I think it's going to disrupt everything. I mean, it's like the internet, but where do I think it will affect? Like, but the internet, again, if you're not old, like it first disrupted book selling. Like Amazon was a bookstore; it didn't sell anything but books. So it destroyed Barnes and Noble and the whole way we just bought books. No one went, why'd you go to a store? It's all on 24/7 on your computer, and you don't need to see a book. Like, you don't have to try it on. So it was actually, it lended itself well to internet sales. And then obviously everything else took off. So I think financial services, it's happened. That's pretty broad. I think it's really affecting, it's going to start affecting the banking system and like just retail banking. Millennials, you know, in the younger generation, they don't buy into this whole balanced portfolio. They don't trust traditional finance. So what, you know, they don't care. They'd much rather have their money in like Bittrex or Coinbase. So they don't care. I mean, for them, they don't value that. To them, that's the same or probably better than JP Morgan or Goldman. Like, these brands don't mean to a younger generation what they meant to maybe our generation, where it was aspirational to be allowed into a certain bank, and like you've arrived and you have your Coots private account. Like, no one cares about that anymore. But that's a negative selling point. So I think it's already happening. And there's just the volume of money. And then you see, if institutional players like hedge funds are trading crypto, the banks don't control that. That's all by the crypto exchanges. So, but the crypto exchanges now are cutting into their game. So FTX has derivatives. Why do you need to Goldman or JP Morgan? So, I mean, it's happening so fast, and it's all offshore and in a different regulatory cost and speed format. So I think that's, the banks, I think they know what's happening, but in my opinion, they're not as scared as they should be. I mean, and the central banks kind of realize, and they're all like, well, we're going to block or regulate Bitcoin. Good luck. Like, how? It's like, how do you regulate something that exists on a blockchain? Like, where is it? It's not in your domicile. So they'll try, and they control the fiat touch points. So they'll try to do it that way. But there's always people who are smart. They always find clever ways to get around these things. So the sooner you have a law, the sooner there'll be a clever way. They close one loophole, people find another. So I think that, the financial services broadly are going to be, this is their Amazon moment for retail, or for Barnes and Noble. So they're now Barnes and Noble, they think they're okay. And, in 5 years, who knows what it looks like. I think then you'll start to see blockchain going into manufacturing, because, why shouldn't everything be on the blockchain? Real estate industry. Why don't you securitize real estate through a securities token? Why don't you, the way that real estate is titled is really old fashioned and expensive. Like, it's all paper, and you pay these people to sign the papers, you pay them to hold the paper. Well, what if you put the real estate on the blockchain? I don't know, it's really efficient cost. I mean, can you imagine the cost saves the people out of their jobs? So it's going to be highly, highly disruptive. I think so many industries have old-fashioned ways of keeping documents, and the whole way we do financings and raise money, it's going to be upended. Everything's gone global. So if I want to do a stock, let's say I'm a company, I want to raise money. So which country do I raise it in? Which stock exchange do I go on? And then that stock exchange is only that market. So if I do it list in London, I'm dealing with the UK and, well, I guess not the European market anymore, just the UK market, right? If I list in Switzerland, it's with the Swiss market. The EU, it's the EU market. So I can just do a token and it's global and 24/7. Why do I want to do that? I mean, it's like, and then a utility token, that's not a stock. So and that could be like, you could take all your frequent flyer miles, they could be utility tokens. You could have a market for those. I mean,
of course.
Anyway, sorry, it's just so exciting, because the whole world can go, and then not only be on it, but you can create things that didn't exist before.
That didn't exist before, yeah.
We don't know what it's going to be. Like the same with the internet. We didn't know what it was going to be. You knew it was great, but you didn't know, again, dial-up modem.
We didn't know we'd have YouTube, for instance, and we didn't even know we'd be doing this.
We'd be doing free Zoom calls, hello. Like as if we're in the same room and we're at different countries. I mean, it's amazing. We take it for granted.
Yeah,
but
and I think that's the other thing as well. I mean, the big thing about obviously blockchain and IoT is really it's the convergence of all of these internet-based technologies, and that's kind of like the long game, isn't it? Really, because when you look at like we just said, you couldn't do video call before. You used to have one device that was the camera. Obviously you still do have now, but you have built-in webcams. But you had one device that was the camera, then the other device was a telephone that got you through on the audio, and then you needed to hook those both up to a screen. Whereas now you don't need a Polycom, you don't need a Yealink, you don't need any one of these desk phones anymore. You just need a laptop and a piece of software, and that's it.
I mean, the internet, like if you look at the bank, so the internet has had an impact on how you interact with the bank. You don't go there anymore. It's a much easier front end. You can look at everything online. So between the customer and the bank, it's been revolutionary. But nothing has changed. But once your money's in the bank is still using old-fashioned settlement systems. So the bank's very inefficient by design, because what incentive do they have to change when they can charge you like massive fees for all these inefficient systems? If it were easy, then you wouldn't need the bank, right? And that's what's happening. So with blockchain, you have a global digital settlement system. So now the back end of all these companies is now like internetified. So you're combining the existing internet, and then you're removing all you have with a global communication system with a global settlement system. That's pretty revolutionary. So that's where you can totally change, and then you can co-locate, have small little companies. And you change corporate governance. Like right now, the bank is in New York. I'm in America. I get a bank account in America. Well, now I can have a blockchain account. I can pick whatever crypto exchange I wish. in whatever country it's in. I can, that company can set up where, like we did, where we want to be regulated. So you can pick the best regulation. Your developers don't have to, I mean, Liechtenstein's tiny, they're not going to live there, but like they can be wherever they need to be. So these global company, it's a whole new way of doing business, and the banks are just going to get decimated. How do you react to that? I mean, it's great. It's a great business school case study is what this is. I mean,
of course.
Sorry for my joy in seeing them suffer, but couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people. I mean, the bank, nobody likes the bank since 2008 anyway, right?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the general consensus across the whole of the crypto space. And it doesn't really matter where you come from, because a lot of people that I speak to that are new coming into the space, they don't know anything about it. But it's like everyone has this, as you said before, the reason I think why everybody's down to earth is because everyone has this same kind of, and I don't want to I don't want to put it the way it is, but it's kind of like this inner hatred for the banks here, and everybody just kind of, I think it's more of a thing of financial freedom and inclusion.
I don't think it's hatred of the banks. Like, there's not, look, the people that work there, they work hard, they're nice people. I think it's the hatred of the inefficiency. It's not this inefficient way of doing things that they don't want to change. And I think we're all so passionate about blockchain, and like it's just, we love building, and we're building a better mousetrap, and that's fun. It's like solving a puzzle. So we know we're going to win, and it's funny because they're not even like worthy players. But so we're playing this game, and then yes, it'll be fun when we, like, I'm sure, like when Jeff Bezos went from like the dude in a garage, and now he's like the richest guy. It took 25 years, but I'm sure he had fun along the way at every milestone. And as he took on the, now he is, now the tables have turned, and now he's the big evil big company that everyone wants to take down. But that's how it works in life. And then I'm sure there'll be, maybe blockchain will cause Amazon to have their Amazon moment. You never know. Like that'll be the technology that disrupts his business model, right? So I think it's just fun. Like otherwise, life would get a bit boring.
It's like playing football with your granddad, isn't it? It's like you're playing football with your granddad, and he used to be a good footballer, but now you're the young footballer. You've come along, and you're showing him some tricks that he hasn't seen before, and he just can't keep up.
He can't keep up.
And but he wants to come out every day and play ball. Yeah, every day and play ball. Yeah, and he makes the goal smaller one day. Yeah, and then the next day he says, like you can only one touch the ball or something like that. And he tries to change the rules around the game, but in the end of the day, you're still going to come out, get that ball, and kick it way quicker than he can. You know what I'm trying to say to you, and that's it. So totally. I'd like to say that's a good analogy for it. But yeah, I mean, thanks very, very much for your insights and this interview with us today. And
it's a pleasure. Happy to come back.
Anytime. And as you said, anytime you're in London, I mean, I'm always around, so you can just hit me.
Definitely, would love to look at it. And I would encourage if your viewers or listeners, if they want to check out Bittrex Global, go to global.bittrex.com and check us out.
Cool. Wonderful. I think I've got a visitor there, so that's right on the buzzer as well. It seems
perfect.
But all right, guys. So listen, we're gonna catch back up with Stephen on another occasion, as he's already said there. But for now, take this video, rewind it, listen back to what the man just said, because he just dropped some knowledge. Yeah. So make sure you keep watching Inside Blockchain. We'll be back very, very, very soon. Thanks again, Stephen, for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Nathaniel. Awesome.
Take care.